Hi, I'm Katie McLean, and I'm the CEO of Tusk Hub. And today we're talking about the growth movement and service. I'd like to welcome Barry Davis, from the president of the human side, who's going to talk to us today about service. Barry, could you just tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to this specialization?
Sure. So I've been in the training and development field for over 35 years, so I'm well settled in. My background is mixed really between training coaches, leadership development, customer service, training trainers. So that's what I've primarily done with everyone from government to private sector, small, large businesses, volunteer sectors. So the specialization now is in customer service. That's our strength. And we've gone to great lengths to invest in sustainable service development.
I love the word sustainable. I like to talk about that with growth as well, and I think one probably leads to the other. So first question, how does customer service relate to the purpose and values of an organization?
Well, service should be integral. So the purpose of an organization is really about creating value for stakeholders and whatever that version might be. And if we're not in service, it's pretty hard to create value. The other side of values is what's important to us, our principles, the way that we conduct our business. And I would always say that if we have our eye on creating value for our customers and valuing them as human beings, and our customers meaning both internal and external, our employees as well as our external customers or clients, if that's our focus, then I think we'll accomplish the kinds of um, objectives that we want for our business and the kind of growth that we need. And really, that sustainability is intertwined with growth. There's no way you can sustain growth without sustained focus on service and relationships.
Yeah, if we're speaking specifically about software as a service tech companies, for example, uh, they're paid annually and the client has a choice almost every year to stay with the product or not. So
Sure.
service plays an important role in maintaining client relationships and also potentially getting client referrals to other potential opportunities. So Barry, tell me then, what does a healthy customer relationship look like, or sorry, a healthy relationship look like between internal and external stakeholders in a company? Love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I think what healthy really means is that there's a consistent investment in creating value. It starts internally with the internal customers, where there's a day-to-day effort, a conscious effort to not only value the person but create value for them. And when that goes inside out, and you're creating value for each other internally, then that enables all of those people who are in direct contact with the external customer to get value to them. So it's a consistent relationship, uh, consistent investment in the relationship. I think one of the hallmarks of it is doing what you said you'd do. So when I worked with a tech company in Vancouver recently, that was their motto: is we say what we do and we do what we say. And it's very simple. They're a very sophisticated company, but at the same time, it comes down to basics like that. Do it with high quality the first time, and then make sure that you're doing what you said you would do, and continually investing in that, the quality of that relationship. And what we're finding with tech companies is there's oftentimes such expertise in the tech side of things, the ability to deliver on the more technical elements, that there's oftentimes on the personal side of things, the interpersonal side, the preference is to be more direct and to the point, and to not be necessarily saying things in a way that we might classify as being great service. So that's to me, that's it's important that we're hitting that balance between relating to other tech people, for example, in an area in a way that they prefer, and that's short and sweet many times, and then also asking the question, what does great service look like, and making sure that the company defines what that is for their employees.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think if you're talking to a technology person, but you're a user and not necessarily technical, there's got to be some bridge in the language and in the way that you communicate that makes sense to both parties, right?
Absolutely. And there's preferences both ways. And so why not have that conversation and explore what that languaging is, how you're framing things both in emails these days, in webinars or sort of web conferencing, and also if we're on the phone with people, just looking at what does that look like from the perspective of how do we relate to this person, and have our antenna up for what is that person showing me for what's meaningful for them.
Right. That makes a lot of sense to me. And that kind of brings me to the idea of trust. You want to be building trust with your clients all the time, but how do we go about building trust? It seems to be something sort of nebulous to some people.
It can be, and I think with trust, I think there's some measure of vulnerability here. There's some measure of sharing your thoughts. There's some measure of not needing to be perfect, of being able to be open and communicating with people. Again, like I said before, it's doing it right the first time. It's making sure that we're following through and doing what we said we'd do. It's a lot of listening, and these days, especially with our concerns from a health perspective, and people on edge and under stress, that I mean, we're wanting to really make sure that genuine listening to understand and showing empathy is at the foundation of building that trust. Because if someone doesn't feel listened to internally or externally, it's pretty hard to build that sense of trust. The other element that we talk about in customer service development is showing genuine effort, and that might seem light, but it's interesting, and I've seen it borne out in customer service sessions over and over, just how important it is that our customer knows that we're working hard for them. And it's not necessarily that we're always able to be successful, because we can't always be successful with them, but at least they know that we're working hard and we're listening and we're responding and we're updating and we're communicating with them in a way that, again, builds trust.
Yeah, I guess part of listening is asking the right questions as well. And that's, not always easy to do, but coming up with meaningful questions to get to the right answers could be majorly helpful as well, I guess.
I think so. And if you don't mind me adding, that's why I love the coaching field and what we learn from not only our international certification in coaching, but training coaches in organizations, is that coaching is 80-90% listening and asking questions. So that ability to really tune into that person and be present with them, show them that you're with them, and ask a question that shows that you're aware of them, it's invaluable in building trust in a relationship.
That's amazing. And so how do we really build, and a lot of companies we talk to are young companies and they haven't been through this. So how do you build and sustain service excellence?
Well, and it's not done well most of the time. So one of the hallmarks is leadership. If the leaders aren't leading the charge and aren't modeling service excellence, then you will not have sustained follow through from people who are receiving training and development in service. Another factor is making sure that the development itself is stimulating and interesting, and that you've got some different modes going. You've got classroom and webinars, and you've got online learning, so that people are getting that learning from some different perspectives. And I think another big part, a couple more big parts of it, is to make sure that the follow through is there. So a lot of times people attend a session, they say, hey, that was great, I got some ideas, but unless you follow through, and we do it for a 2-year period on a 1-day program. So unless people follow through extensively with that leadership support, following and supporting there, then you can expect that that will fade away. And it's called the Ebbinghaus curve in customers or in learning and development, is that it's if you don't tend to it and follow through, it's going to fade away. And the last element that I would mention, there's others, but one other element is the capacity to build habits. So I think most of us don't really understand how our brain works and what it really takes to form a new habit or break a habit that's not working for us. So if you've got that capacity, which we ingrain in our development, then the person is able to not only take the concept or skill,
Mhm.
but build a habit that's sustainable over time. So without those elements, you often have learning and development that just washes away within weeks to months. And it's very frustrating for leaders to spend money on learning and development and not have it take and sustain over a long period of time.
Yeah, that's probably the toughest thing. I mean, over the years in some of the corporations I've worked in, they'll come out with a new way of doing things, but it quickly sort of peters out if leadership doesn't enforce it. So that's probably something that's difficult to achieve without some type of support, external support or coaching or training. So that's really
Absolutely.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's so much effort these days on the change front as far as organizational change and using all the tools we have there. I think those need to be in place along with the capacity for each individual to make change on a personal level.
Yeah. So I've learned a lot today about trust and sustaining service excellence from you, Barry. And thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Nice to be with you.